The Los Angeles Dodgers continue to snatch up all the best players. Are they ruining baseball? We'll discuss that. Also, we will talk about those who just missed my top 10 prospect list. All that on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at Shortstop Ball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves. If you're new and watching this on YouTube, please do me a huge favor. Stop what you're doing. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. Doesn't take you more than a minute, and it helps out the show a ton whenever you do those things. If you're listening on the audio version, you can help out by leaving me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you so much for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. On today's podcast, we'll talk about the Roki Sasaki signing as well as the Tanner Scott signing over the weekend from the Dodgers. And are they ruining the sport that we love so much? Does something need to change? Is there going to be a work stoppage over this? We'll get into all that on today's episode. We'll also begin our prospect rankings series. We'll look at those who just missed the cut for the top 10. We'll do that in the second segment of today's show and end it off with some news around Major League Baseball. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs with FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets guaranteed. Win or lose, visit FanDuel.com to get started today. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose, if you win your first or with a $5 bet. So big news over the weekend in baseball. It is the Los Angeles Dodgers just continuing to do what they've done for really 2 off seasons in a row now. Getting Ohtani last off season. This offseason, they're signing all the best free agents, whether it be Blake Snell, Teoscar Hernandez, and now over the weekend, Roki Sasaki and Tanner Scott as well. And it's frustrating as a fan that is not a fan of the Dodgers to sit in here and look at that and see what they're doing and see your team doing absolutely nothing. And it's frustrating. As David Agnesia said, did LA get anybody else today? I don't think so, but I'm not positive on that because they just seem to get somebody else every single day, and it's somebody big. So over the weekend, they signed Roki Sasaki for $6.5 million. To be fair, Sasaki could have chosen any team, but he chose the Dodgers, and that's your right as a free agent. But then I think we all knew Sasaki was going to the Dodgers. That felt inevitable. You say the Padres and Blue Jays were in it. It felt like he was always going to go to the Dodgers. I think the one that really hurts is Tanner Scott. And they signed him for 4 years, $72 million. They throw in a $20 million signing bonus. $21 million of the deal is deferred. And I think this is a deal that got a lot of people, and especially a lot of Braves fans, because the Braves were reported to be in on Tanner Scott. And he goes to the Dodgers. Absolutely last thing that you wanted to see here. And a lot of people are really upset about this. And this tweet from Jeff Passan, he said the Dodgers' luxury tax payroll in 2025 will exceed $375 million, which would be about $70 million higher than the next highest team, which happens to be the Phillies, a team in the division with the Braves. And the Yankees are the only other team right now projected to be over $300 million. The Braves are currently a little over $200 million and rank around 10th in baseball for the luxury tax. So the Dodgers are spending almost $200 million more dollars in terms of luxury tax dollars than the Atlanta Braves right now. But again, they're spending $75 million more than anybody else. So it's not just the Braves they're outspending. They are outspending everyone. Now, Steve Cohen tried this a couple of years ago as well with the Mets in 2023. They had a luxury tax payroll of $375 million. So again, very similar to what the Dodgers have now. And, the Braves still won the division. The Mets went a little bit further in the postseason. Or no, they got knocked out in the wild card that year as well, I believe. That was the year that the Phillies went on. So again, spending money doesn't mean anything. But honestly, the way the Dodgers have done it, you feel a lot more, and they just won the World Series. Feel a lot more confident in the way that they have done it, that is going to net some really good results for them. And many baseball fans, non-Dodgers fans, I know BC is an everydayer in here who's a Dodgers fan, is I'm sure loving this. But other fans outside of Dodgers fans are very frustrated and screaming that the game is ruined and big changes need to happen in the next CBA. Let me give you my thoughts about this. And I talked about this a little bit on the episode I did after Juan Soto was signed for big money. And I talked a lot about that, how there's only a handful of teams that can do stuff like that. Dodgers, Yankees, and Mets, I think, are really the only three teams, maybe the Phillies as well, that can do something like this and spin to this level. But I think really it's the Dodgers, it's the Yankees, and it's the Mets. Let me be very clear about this. There is nothing the Dodgers are doing that is illegal, that is against the rules. They're not even really doing anything that is shady or wrong. I know a lot of people are getting tired of the deferrals. I am too, but there's nothing wrong with that. They're not doing anything wrong. Everything they are doing, yes, technically speaking, every other team in baseball could do. At least that's the line that the national media keeps feeding us. And everybody's upset with the national media too, because they're coming back and saying, well, tell your team to spend more. Not everybody can spend $300 million. Like, that is just, it is not feasible for every team. It's just not true. Could other teams spend more? Yes. And that's always been my beef and my argument with this, is that there needs to be some sort of salary floor, because certainly teams need to be spending more, but that's not going to help the Pirates sign Shohei Ohtani. It's not going to help the Rockies go land even a Tanner Scott or a Juan Soto. It's not going to help these smaller market teams go out and sign these big free agents. It's just not. It is not a level playing field. Look, part of the reason why the Dodgers are getting these players is because they've created a winning culture. Who doesn't want to go play for Ohtani and Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman and win World Series after World Series? Why wouldn't? If you're a free agent, and obviously they're going to pay you, why wouldn't you want to go to that team? Look, the Braves have benefited from that in the past. They've got a lot of these team-friendly extensions because those players like the clubhouse that they have there, and they like the environment that the Braves have created there, and they want to be a part of that. The Braves have benefited from that. A lot of people were upset with the Braves because of all these extensions that they were signing to team-friendly deals. And there were fans of other teams saying something needs to change there because the Braves are getting too good of deals. And now it's the other side of the spectrum where fans are upset because the Dodgers are spending way too much money. They're spending absurd amounts of money on these players and creating this super team. So, again, there has to be something in the middle. But this is not a fair system. I mean, you cannot sit here with a straight face and tell me that this is a fair system. It is not. Can other teams spend more money? Yes. Can other teams do what the Dodgers and Yankees and Mets can do? Absolutely not. There are maybe 5 to 10 teams that can spend to the level of the Dodgers, the Yankees, and the Mets. That's it. Not every team can do this. Only certain teams can. And that's why this is not a fair system. It just is not. The way that baseball is structured right now, it is not a fair system. As I talked about in that other podcast after the Juan Soto signing, he becomes a free agent. You immediately know the Pirates aren't signing him. The Marlins aren't signing him. The Rockies aren't signing him. There's half of the league is eliminated immediately because they just don't have the money to spend like that. So it is not a fair system. When you look at other sports that do have a salary cap, almost every team is going to have the ability to sign any free agent. That is not the case in baseball. Not every team is going to be able to sign a particular free agent. Only certain teams are able to spend to that level. It is not a fair system. A system without a salary cap is not fair. That being said, I'm not completely in favor of a salary cap. I am in favor of a salary floor. And like I said, that's always been my biggest gripe is, yes, teams need to spend more, but I need the national media to stop spitting this narrative that every team can do what the Dodgers and Yankees and Mets are doing. They just can't. That is not a true statement. That is completely false. That is a very false narrative that other teams can do that. Tigers, White Sox, Rangers, like these teams aren't doing that. It's just not happening. So again, I don't necessarily want to see a salary cap myself because I do like the freedom that you have for baseball. Plus, I know that that's going to lead to a strike. And that's the other part of this. MLB Trade Rumors put out a poll asking fans, would you give up the 2027 season in order to see a salary cap implemented? And it has been overwhelmingly voted yes upon fans, which I think is just crazy. Look, I get it. It's an unfair system. People are mad right now. But to give up a year of baseball, which was what would happen? I mean, there would be a strike because the players don't want a salary cap because it's going to limit $700 million contracts. Those are going to go away. Players will fight tooth and nail to not have a salary cap. So if that's what you want, you are going to miss time. And I'm sorry, I just love baseball too much. We've had the 2020 shortened season. We had the strike mess that we had to deal with in 2021, even though we didn't necessarily miss time for that. Don't take any more baseball away from me. It is my escape from reality at times. It's a sport that I love. Please don't take it away from me. But I think we have to be honest with ourselves. It's not a fair system. Not everybody can do what the Yankees, Dodgers, and others, Mets are doing, but teams can spend. You go back to that other podcast I did, and there's most of the league has been within the top 10 to 15 in payroll over the last 10 years. Teams can spend, and it is baseball. You don't have to be the top payroll every year to win it. But, as I said in that podcast, 7 of the last 10 World Series champions were top 10 in payroll. And, the Braves were the last one to not be in the top 10, and they were 11th. So, again, you have to spend money to win. That is pretty much proven. It's very rare that that's not the case, but you don't have to be the top team. And it is baseball. Things can happen. So I guess to ultimately answer the question, have the Dodgers ruined baseball? It's not great, certainly, but it is baseball. And I think it's fun to have a team that you can hate. Like I grew up in an era where you hated the Yankees because of how much they won and how much they spent. And I think it makes it somewhat fun to have a giant like that everybody nationally can root against. Now, they go out and win the next 3 or 4 World Series. Maybe I'm singing a different tune. And I still think there are other teams. I think the Braves can beat the Dodgers. I know you don't right now. That's probably a conversation we'll have on the next podcast. I think there are teams out there that can compete. This is baseball, and that's what makes it so much fun. You don't have to spend the most money to win, but you do have to spend some money. And the Braves have done that. Other teams have done that. I don't think it's ruined baseball. I'm going to watch every single game. I love the sport. I understand why fans are frustrated, but you still got to go out and play the games. And look, as much as people want to look at that rotation for the Dodgers, and yes, it is great. And yes, they just need to get to the postseason with 3 or 4 of those guys healthy, but that's as big as question mark as it is for the Braves rotation. And everybody points to the Braves rotation that, there's regression. There's a lot of injury risk in there. Look at that lineup, that rotation for the Dodgers, and tell me who's throwing 170 innings for you this year. There's a lot of injury risk in there as well. And we saw last year on the offensive side of things, how that can really hurt you. So again, you still got to play the game. It's not fun. I don't love it seeing what the Dodgers are doing over there, but you still have to play the games, and I don't want to strike. But again, my final point on this, it's not a fair system. I think you have to know that. And I think that you have to understand that you can still win in that, even with it being swayed towards, a few teams in the bigger markets. Not every team can do what the Yankees and Dodgers and Mets are able to do. That's just a fact. And I wish the national media would stop pushing the narrative that every team can do that. They just simply can't. All right, next we'll turn our attention to our minors spotlight. We'll look at the honorable mentions, those who just missed the top 10. Some really good names in there. I know the Brave system is not thought of very highly, but we're about to talk about some really good names that aren't making my top 10. We'll do that here next. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. They also have World Series odds out there for 2025. Let's take a look real quick and see how much of a favorite the Dodgers are right now. And if the Braves have somehow found their way back into the mix, the Dodgers have gone up to plus 270 to win the World Series. I think it was around plus 350 last time I looked. The Braves have the third best odds at plus 950, and the Phillies and Mets have dropped down and with the Dodgers going up. But you can see all that over at FanDuel.com. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/play-safe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way that you play. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Thanks as always. Making Locked On Braves your first listen of the day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen solely talking about the Dodgers, talking about if they're ruining baseball like everybody is right now. You can check that out on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. We're still right now at 3 episodes a week at the moment. I know Jessica at the top of the podcast was looking forward to us getting back to every day. We will do that soon enough, but there just isn't a lot to talk about right now. We're having to talk about the Dodgers because they're the ones that are doing stuff at the moment. But as soon as spring training does begin, we will get back to 5 days a week. But for now, unless something happens, we'll be back on Thursday night with the podcast and then our Friday mailbag episode. All right, I want to begin our prospect rankings this week, looking at the honorable mentions. And then next week, we'll look at numbers 10 through 6, and then we'll look at the top 5 after that. Now, the first one I have for my honorable mention is Giancarlo Lara. I was debating between Lara and the player that I ultimately put 10, but I moved Lara here because I'm feel less confident in him being a starter at this point than I do the player that I put 10. I think they both have pretty similar upside. I do think Lara is still going to be an impact player at some regard at the major league level, whether that is a starter or a high leverage reliever. I think the stuff is that good. But after a breakout in 2023, 2024 was somewhat disappointing. Obviously, a delayed start to the season with an injury, but it was the walks that came back. You know, that was what made it so special. His second half run in 2023, he really cut down on those walks, but his walk per nine was back up over 6 this past year. Still had a 10.23 K per nine and still had a solid 3.92 ERA. That is really good, but got to see those walks come back down in order to see Lara ultimately hit his upside. Now, next on this list, Nacho Alvarez, a guy that I've had in my top 10 for a while. I think Nacho might have one of the safest floors among Braves prospects, and I probably should have prefaced this at the top. The way that I do my prospect rankings, I do it strictly based on upside. This player reaches their highest potential. What could they be? I think Nacho has a very safe floor. And for that reason, you're still going to see him in many people's top 5, top 10 in the Braves system. I think the hit tool is for real, but I'm a little tired of waiting on the power to come. He did show a 167 ISO at AAA last year, which is great. And if he keeps that up, then perhaps you have something. But that was after putting up a 047 ISO at AA. In his brief MLB debut, he looked completely overwhelmed, going 3 for 30 with no walks and 10 strikeouts, far from the player we've seen at the minor league level. I'm not putting much stock on that. He was rushed, as the Braves have unfortunately had to do with many prospects over the last couple of years. I'm certainly not giving up on Nacho Alvarez, but I think his ceiling does seem to be capped as a hit tool utility player with 15 home run type of pop, perhaps 20 steals. He does steal a good bit of bags. And look, a guy who can hit 270 and get on base at a 350 clip and 15, middle teens home runs and steals 20 bases, that's still a good player. But then there's also the fact that where do you play him? Now, I don't know that he has the range for shortstop. He doesn't have the power for third base, and plus he's blocked there. Second base may be where he winds up. I did my 2028 projections the other day, and I'm not very confident in this, but I had Nacho Alvarez penciled in as the shortstop. As a second baseman. I think there's a chance he goes over there. Now, he has the arm and the hands to play on the left side, but if you did want to get his bat in the lineup, second base might be his ultimate spot. It's where we saw him make his debut. The next on my list is Drew Hackenberg. Hackenberg, Braun, and Burkhalter all in the same boat for me. Could be solid back-end starters, but the ceilings aren't very high. Braun feels like the safest bet to be a big league back-end starter, while Burkhalter and Hackenberg feel like safe bets to be solid relievers at some point. But I think all three of those guys are going to be big league pitchers. But I don't think their ceilings are very high. I think they have some pretty safe floors as, back-end starters, relievers, like I said, but I just don't think the ceiling is very high for those guys at the moment. Didier Fuentes, the guy that just missed out, turns 20 this year, so still a lot of room to grow for him. Right now, it very much looks like a reliever profiles I talked about when I did my breakdown of him, but you can dream on what he might be if he adds to his repertoire a little bit. Just needs to develop a third, fourth pitch in there, and I think he has the stuff to be a starter, but just haven't seen that yet. And if you do see that, he'd probably shoot up into my top 10 because I think there is a lot to like there. And then my last honorable mention is Herrick Hernandez, guy we previewed or spotlighted last week. I think he's ultimately a lefty reliever, but I think he's going to be a really good lefty reliever and perhaps very soon. And this is the conversation we have a lot on here. I've had a lot on here. Is the Braves knowing when to say, okay, I don't know that this guy can give us what we need in the rotation. Can we use him as a reliever? Knowing that at some point you could go back. It just feels like the Braves are very hesitant to do that a lot of times. Maybe you got a guy like a Hernandez, like a Hackenberg, who, could be solid fourth, fifth starters in your rotation. And that is very needed. And you need those guys. But you also could just insert them into your bullpen. And it doesn't mean they have to be in your bullpen forever. But I'm tired of spending $18 million is what you had to pay for Tanner Scott and having to spend so much money on bullpen arms when you got these guys who that if you turn them into relievers, I think they'd be really solid relievers. And it's not like you're completely shutting the door on them as starters. So I think the Braves have several guys like that in their system. Hackenberg, Alara, Fuentes, or Hernandez, Burkhalter. I think all these are guys that have some good stuff that could really play up in a bullpen role. But again, it's that timing of knowing, okay, when are they more valuable to me in this role compared to being a back end type of starter? When do you give up on dreaming on their upside of maybe being a number 3 or number 2 starter, and knowing where their best value is and not having to spend so much money looking for relievers on the opening market or having to trade for relievers at the deadline? You got guys in your system that could probably fill those roles for you and do a really good job. But those are my honorable mentions right there, guys who just missed the top 10. Lara, Alvarez, Hackenberg, Braun, Fuentes, Burkhalter, Hernandez, all exciting prospects that, I can't wait to see this upcoming year. But they do miss my top 10. And I think that kind of speaks to this class a little bit. The fact that some of these guys aren't in my top 10, but I think they're very interesting prospects that I think are going to have an impact. Some of these guys just have some really safe floors that may have more of an impact than some of the guys in my top 10. It's just the way I do my prospect rankings strictly based on upside. The guys in my top 10 have a lot more upside than these players. So that is this week. Again, we'll pick it back up next week, going through prospects 10 through 7. But those are the guys who just missed the cut. Let me know what you think about some of those prospects if you would have them in your top 10. All right, next we'll get into some news of the day, including the Braves making another minor league deal this week as well. We'll discuss that and more here next. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely has happened to me more than once. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances, and that's exactly what Rocket Money is, a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions. Most of that was mine, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. So the Atlanta Braves continue to add depth at the minor league level, not so much at the major league level, as they sign lefty Chasen Shreve to a minor league deal. Might sound familiar to many Braves fans as he started with the Atlanta Braves, but now 34-year-old, 11-year vet at the major league level. Yes, he kept that streak alive with one appearance at the major league level last year. He has a career 3.96 ERA and 357 innings at the big league level. Not probably the guy that you're looking for here, low 90s fastball, but a good slider and split. However, you hear, Braves bringing in a lefty reliever. They just lost AJ Minter to the Mets. You just saw lefty Tanner Scott go to the Dodgers, and the Braves' response is 34-year-old Chasen Shreve, soft-tossing lefty who has the same exact splits versus lefties and righties. So not exactly somebody that you're looking to come in and be a lefty specialist. Both righties and lefties have an OPS of 743 against him in his career. And I know there's a lot of concern about the Braves, not getting those lefties, but they're bringing Minter back, not getting Tanner Scott. Like, the Braves have Aaron Bummer and Dylan Lee, two really good guys from the left side who can get really both sides out. And you got Perdomo coming back. I think a name that a lot of fans are forgetting about. And look, we don't know what he's going to look like coming back. He is out of options, so he's pretty much, unless things just looked awful in spring training, he's going to be on the roster. But really good strikeout numbers a couple of years ago before the injury. So the Braves do have some solid lefty options, but certainly you lose a guy like Minter, who's been very good for you. You see the best reliever on the market go, and Tanner Scott, to one of your biggest rivals, and a team standing in your way. Doesn't feel great, but there are still some good lefties in the system. Now, the Blue Jays finally signed somebody. They get Anthony Santander for 5 years, $92.5 million. The poor Blue Jays, man. Thought they were going to get Ohtani last year and didn't. Thought they were getting Sasaki this year and didn't. They've tried to get so many free agents to come north of the border, and it's just a hard sell, it seems like. And they got to overpay to get a guy like Anthony Santander, who's probably going to be your DH. And you're paying him 5 years, $92.5 million. Like, I know we've talked about it a little bit for the Braves, and maybe like $470 or something like that. That's an overpay for the Blue Jays. There's some deferred money in this as well, which I guess maybe brings down the overall value a little bit. But the Blue Jays get their guy. They get Anthony Santander. I don't know what the Blue Jays are doing. There are rumors that maybe they're going to trade Vlad Jr., but they're holding on to Bo Bichette. They're trying to go for it. They're maybe the worst team in their division. I don't know. It's a mess over there. They're trying. I'll give them that. A for effort. They try to get Ohtani really, really bad. They try to get Sasaki. Yeah, I don't want to get back into the Dodgers conversation too, but while we're on the Sasaki thought process again, all the national media saying other teams could do this, other teams could do the same thing. Sasaki could have gotten as much, if not more, money from the Padres or Blue Jays. He just chose the Dodgers. And look, again, nothing the Dodgers doing wrong there. They've created an environment that players want to play for, but it wasn't a money thing. And there are even reports that Scott got offered more money from other teams, but he wanted to go to the Dodgers. I mean, and you have national media members out there telling your team, just spend more money, just offer more money. They tried. Players just want to go to the Dodgers right now. What are you going to do about it? You can't. I mean, there was only so much money that a team could offer Sasaki, and the Padres and Blue Jays could have offered him similar, if not more, money, but he was always going to the Dodgers. You knew he was always going to the Dodgers. Money being equal, he's going to go to the team that just won a World Series and has some of the best talent already on its roster. Moving along from that again, the Mets signed AJ Minter to a 2-year, $22 million deal. We briefly touched on that at the end of Friday's Mailbag podcast. That broke during that episode. Like, it's more money that I would have given AJ Minter. I hate that he's no longer Brave. I really hate that he's with the Mets. That's a lot of money for a guy who's coming off, pretty big hip issue. $11 million a year. I get it. He's a lefty. They're always going to get paid a little bit more, but that's a lot of money for AJ Minter. And the A's signed Jose Leclerc to a 1-year, $10 million deal. I like Leclerc. Wouldn't have hated that on a 1-year deal either. But again, you're spending $10 million on your bullpen when you got arms in your system that you could turn into relievers that could probably be as good as Jose Leclerc. Now, he's obviously got the pedigree and the history of doing it at the major league level. But I just hate that the Braves keep getting put in a spot where they got to spend $10, $12, $15 million a year on relievers. Arms that you should be able to develop and find in your system pretty easily. And the Braves just haven't done a great job of that. And because of that, they've had to go out and spend a lot of money on relievers. At least they did in the past. They're not doing it this year. All right, that is all the news of the day right now. Again, still waiting on that major move from the Atlanta Braves. Hopefully coming any day now. Everybody's fingers crossed. We're going to see something happen, but we are getting very close to spring training, which I'm excited about. I want to get to talking about baseball in the field and get this offseason over with because it has not been a very fun one, but I really appreciate you for sticking with me through this offseason. Thank you for all those that are here live. Andre McCandles, David Thatcher, AJ Evans, BC. I know you're extremely excited in here. Benjamin Lee, Lone Wolf as well. Dogs fan. Some of you may be watching in the national championship game. I thought that ended 2 weeks ago. Good luck to any Buckeyes or Irish fans in here. Matt Karcher as well. Thank you all for joining today's episode live. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate all the comments, conversation. Please make sure if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, leave me a comment down below. Follow us on social media at shortstopball, at @LockedOn_Braves. Make sure you go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen of the day. And again, if less anything happens and the Braves actually make a major move, we'll be back on Thursday talking more Braves and baseball, getting you set up for the 2025 season. But that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.